Hwa-yeon Lee had always loved the night shifts at the private clinic Radiance of Health. In those hours, when the city fell asleep and the corridors of the medical center sank into a silence broken only by the quiet beeping of monitors, she felt truly needed. Every patient, every procedure, every blood pressure check or floor change mattered. At 28, she had devoted 6 years of her life to medicine and had never once regretted her choice. That night, in early October, as a light fog wrapped around autumn Seoul and plane tree leaves rustled under the feet of the few late passersby, Hwa-yeon was preparing for her usual shift from 10 p.m. to 8 in the morning. Her dark hair was tied back in a practical ponytail, her white coat buttoned all the way up, and in her pocket lay a photograph taken 3 years ago at a wedding. In it, she and Suho were smiling, unaware of the trial fate had in store for them. Suho Choi. Her husband. The man she met in the university library when they both reached for the same anatomy book. He studied sports medicine and dreamed of becoming a professional team coach. Tall, fair-skinned, with a gentle smile, he seemed the embodiment of reliability. Suho had grown up in the Hope Orphanage in Gyeonggi Province, never knowing his parents, and Hwa-yeon admired his inner strength, his ability to build a life from nothing. Mrs. Lee, it looks like you'll have a quiet night, said the head nurse, Oh-seon Hee, as she handed over the shift. All patients are stable, and no new admissions are expected. Hwa-yeon nodded, taking the folders of documents. The clock showed 2200 hours. 10 hours of work lay ahead, but she didn't complain. Night shifts paid better, and they needed the money. She and Suho were saving for their own apartment. For now, they rented a small 2-room place in the Mapo district and paid a considerable sum each month to their strict landlady, Mrs. Hwang. The first few hours of the shift passed quietly. Hwa-yeon made her rounds, checked patients' conditions, and recorded their vitals. In room 4 lay Mr. Yu, an elderly man recovering from gallbladder surgery. In room 7, a young woman after an appendectomy. In room 10, a teenage boy with a complicated leg fracture from a soccer game. Around 3 a.m. As Hwa-yeon was filling out paperwork at the nurse's station, the lights suddenly went out. A moment later, the emergency lamps flickered on, bathing the corridor in an anxious yellow glow. What happened? Asked Sojina, the night administrator, rushing in with a worried expression. I don't know. Everything was fine just a minute ago, Hwa-yeon replied, rising from her chair. 5 minutes later, the technician arrived. The main electrical panel had malfunctioned. Repairs would take some time, and since all patients were stable and the backup power supported the essential equipment, the clinic's management decided to send part of the staff home. Mrs. Lee, you can go, said the department head, Mrs. Yoon. Mr. Nam and I can handle things. Your shift will still be counted in full. Hwa-yeon glanced at the clock. 3:25 a.m. By this hour, Suho would be sound asleep. He worked as a manager at the Olympic Sports Center, and his day began at 9. Then a sudden thought struck her. She could stop by the 24-hour bakery Sweet Dreams on Seogong Avenue and buy his favorite red bean and cream buns. He loved waking up to the smell of freshly baked bread. Changing into casual clothes, simple jeans and a warm beige jacket, Hwa-yeon left the clinic. The October night greeted her with cool air and stillness. The sky was covered with clouds, but faint starlight seeped through. The streets were nearly empty, only an occasional taxi passed, carrying drowsy passengers. The bakery was a 15-minute bus ride away. Hwa-yeon bought 4 buns, 2 with red bean, 2 with cream, and the barista gave her a free cup of Americano. Thank you for coming at night, said the young woman with a name tag reading Minju, smiling. Hardly anyone drops by at this hour. Hwa-yeon smiled back and stepped outside, the warm bag in her hands. The clock showed 4:15 a.m. It took her 20 minutes to get home. When she entered the lobby of their building, a 5-story structure from the 1990s with peeling yellow plaster, the security guard, old Mr. Lim, was dozing in his chair. Hearing her steps, he startled and opened his eyes. "Oh, Mrs. Lee." He looked embarrassed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I thought you worked until morning." "The shift was cut short due to a technical issue," said Hwa-yeon, heading for the stairs. The elevator had been out of order for 6 months, and the tenants had filed complaints, but to no avail. "Mrs. Lee, wait," the guard said awkwardly, his tone uneasy. "I thought you knew about your husband's sister. She's been here almost every night. It's just that the landlady, Mrs. Huang, is strict about unregistered tenants. You should probably tell her officially that a relative is staying over." Hwa-yeon froze on the first step. The bag of buns nearly slipped from her hands. "Sister? What sister?" Suho had no relatives. He'd always said he was completely alone after the orphanage, that his classmates had scattered and he kept in touch with no one. "Mr. Lim," Hwa-yeon's voice came out quieter than she intended, "my husband doesn't have a sister. No relatives at all." The guard turned pale. But that young woman. She comes almost every night around 11, when you're at work. Leaves early in the morning. Your husband told me last week she's his younger sister from the province, looking for a job in Seoul." The floor seemed to tilt under Hwa-yeon's feet. Each word struck like a hammer. Every night. Almost every night. A young woman. A sister from the province. Lies. All of it, lies. "Thank you, Mr. Lim," she said mechanically and began climbing the stairs. Her legs moved on their own. 2nd floor. 3rd. 4th, their floor. Only one thought pulsed in her head: it's a mistake. A misunderstanding. Suho will explain. There's an explanation. But her heart, damn that heart, was pounding so loud it seemed ready to burst from her chest, screaming, "You know the truth. You just don't want to face it." Hwa-yeon stopped in front of their door, apartment 402. Her hand, clutching the key, trembled. From behind the door came sounds. Laughter. A woman's laughter, light and carefree. Then a man's voice, Suho's voice, saying something, followed by more laughter. She turned the key slowly, as quietly as possible. The door opened silently. They had oiled the hinges just last week. The hallway was dimly lit by the nightlight. On the floor stood a pair of unfamiliar high heels, red, glossy. Beside them lay a woman's purse with a golden chain. Hwa-yeon took off her shoes and stepped inside. The laughter came from the bedroom. The door was ajar, yellow light spilling in a thin line across the wooden floor. Each step felt heavier. Her hands grew cold. Her legs numb. Her throat tight. She pushed the door open. The scene burned itself into her memory with painful clarity. Their bed, the one they had chosen together at a furniture store 2 years ago. The white sheets Hwa-yeon had washed and ironed 4 days earlier. And on that bed, Suho, with a woman she had never seen before. The woman was young, about 23 or 24, with long hair dyed chestnut with reddish streaks. Bright makeup, a bold smile, her body wrapped in a short satin robe. Her robe. Hwa-yeon recognized it instantly, the beige robe she had kept for special occasions. Suho sat beside the woman, wearing only sweatpants, his hand resting casually on her shoulder. When the door opened, he didn't even flinch. He simply turned his head and looked at his wife. There was no fear, no shame, no remorse in his eyes, only irritation. "Oh, for God's sake, Hwa-yeon." He frowned, as if she had interrupted something trivial. "What are you doing here? Your shift's supposed to end at 8. Hwa-yeon stood in the doorway, clutching the bag of buns. She couldn't say a word. Her voice was trapped somewhere deep inside, smothered by shock and pain. "Oh, so this is the wife?" The woman on the bed laughed, tossing her hair back. "Suho, you said she worked all night. What bad luck." Shut up, Minnesio, muttered Suho, though his tone carried no anger, just annoyance. Minnesio. So that was her name. Who is she? Hwa-yeon finally forced the words out, her voice hoarse and unfamiliar. Suho got up from the bed, walked to the dresser, and pulled out a t-shirt. As he put it on, he spoke in an even, almost indifferent tone. Look, Hwa-yeon, you've ruined the moment, but maybe it's for the best. It's time we talked like adults. Minnesio is my girlfriend. We've been together for 4 months. 4 months. 4 months of betrayal, deceit, and lies. 4 months while Hwa-yeon worked night shifts, saved for their future, dreamed of a family. How could you? She whispered, her voice trembling. Easily, said Suho, crossing his arms over his chest. His face stayed cold, expressionless. You know, I needed the insurance from your job. The private clinic gives great family coverage. I used it for half a year while I was looking for something better. Now I've got a promotion at Olympic, my own insurance, and a decent salary. I don't need you anymore. Each word struck her like a slap. Insurance. He had married her for insurance? You didn't mean that when you proposed, Hwa-yeon said, tears rising to her eyes. You told me you loved me. I did, he shrugged. Or I thought I did. Honestly, I'm not sure. Maybe I just wanted stability. But now I realize, Minnesio's more exciting. She's younger, livelier, not boring like you. You're too proper, too predictable. Always your shifts, your tired face, your talk about patience. I'm sick of the dullness. Minnesio giggled from the bed. Oh, honey, don't be so cruel. Though. You're right. I am way more interesting. She stood, walked over to him, and deliberately kissed him on the lips, her eyes fixed on Hwa-yeon the entire time. There was triumph in that kiss. Pack your things before evening, said Suho, wrapping an arm around Minnesio's waist. I'll change the locks tomorrow. The lease is in my name, so legally, you are nobody here. Go back to your parents or rent a room. I don't care. Hwa-yeon stood frozen. Parents. Her parents lived in the Jeolla province, her father worked at a fish factory, her mother sold vegetables at the market. They barely made ends meet. She couldn't go back to them as a burden. Suho, please, her voice broke as tears streamed down her cheeks. We're husband and wife. 3 years together. A formality, he said flatly. I'll file for divorce next week. Don't resist, and it'll all go smoothly. Oh my God, she's crying, Minnesio rolled her eyes. Listen, sweetheart, he doesn't love you. Accept it and leave with some dignity, if you have any. Something inside Hwa-yeon shattered completely. Not anger. Not rage. Just emptiness. A vast, cold emptiness where her heart, once full of love and hope, had been. She turned without a word and left the bedroom. In the hallway, she opened the closet, took out her old gym bag, and began to pack. Her hands moved automatically, underwear from the dresser, a few t-shirts, jeans, documents from the desk drawer, a makeup bag from the bathroom. Everything essential fit into one bag. 3 years of marriage, compressed into a single bag. Laughter echoed from the bedroom. Minnesio said something, Suho replied, and they both laughed. Laughed at her pain, her broken life, her crushed dreams. Hwa-yeon zipped up the bag, put on her jacket, and walked out. The bag of buns lay forgotten on the hallway floor, a pitiful reminder of an unfulfilled morning surprise. The door shut behind her, and she slowly descended the stairs. Mr. Lim was asleep at his post. She stepped out into the street. The October morning greeted her with a cool breeze and the first pale rays of dawn breaking through the clouds. Only then, standing on the empty street with the bag in her hand, did Hwa-yeon finally break down. Tears streamed down her face, unstoppable. She wandered through the awakening streets of Seoul, aimless, her feet carrying her wherever they pleased. The city was coming alive, 24-hour stores opened, people gathered at bus stops for the first morning routes, and the horizon glowed pink and gold with sunrise. But for Hwa-yeon, the world had lost all color. Everything seemed gray, blurred, unreal. 3 years. 1,095 days. She remembered every anniversary, every birthday, every small celebration. She remembered how Suho had given her a simple bracelet with a heart-shaped charm for their first anniversary. How they had eaten ramen at 2 in the morning, sitting on the floor of their tiny rented room because they couldn't afford a restaurant. She remembered his promises, "I'll make you happy, Hwa-yeon. We'll build a good life together." Lies. All of it had been lies. Insurance. Stability. Convenience. That was all she had meant to him. Hwa-yeon stopped at the bridge over the Cheonggyecheon stream. The narrow river flowed through the heart of Seoul, lined with trees and benches. Now, in the pre-dawn hour, it was nearly empty, only a few joggers passed by, and an elderly couple stretched by the water's edge. Sitting down on a bench by the railing, Hwa-yeon set her bag beside her and buried her head in her hands. What now? Where could she go? She had no place of her own, her parents were far away and couldn't help, and friends. Truthfully, there weren't many left. Medical school and work had taken all her time. She had lost touch with most of her classmates. Her colleagues at the clinic were kind, but asking mere strangers for shelter felt humiliating. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Hwa-yeon took it out with trembling hands. A message from Suho: "Take all your stuff before 6 p.m. After that, I'm throwing it out." Even now, even after everything, he couldn't show an ounce of decency. She silenced the phone and shoved it back into her pocket. The sky was brightening. 5:30 a.m. Somewhere in the clinic, her co-workers were finishing their shifts, patients were waking up, and another ordinary day was beginning. But her life had shattered into pieces, and there was no way to put them back together. Maybe I could find a dorm room, she whispered to herself. Or rent a bed space somewhere. But that would require a deposit, and she didn't have much left. Her next paycheck was 2 weeks away, and most of her last salary had gone toward bills and groceries. Hwa-yeon rose from the bench and kept walking along the river. A cyclist passed by, then a woman walking her dog. Life went on, indifferent to her pain. She turned toward a nearby bus stop, a transparent shelter with a few plastic seats. It was empty. Hwa-yeon went inside, sat down on the cold seat, and felt the tears welling up again. How could she have been so blind? 4 months. He had lied to her for 4 whole months, and she hadn't seen it. Were there signs she'd missed? Had he grown distant, colder? Searching her memory, Hwa-yeon tried to trace the clues. Suho had started working late more often, talking about new projects, about building training schedules. She believed him, proud of his career progress. He had kissed her less, held her less, but she had blamed it on exhaustion, on the dull rhythm of married life. What a naive fool she had been. Hwa-yeon wiped her tears with the sleeve of her jacket. Crying was useless. She needed to act, to think, to make decisions. But it was so hard to force herself to think rationally when everything inside her burned with pain and humiliation. Maybe she should call her mother? But what could she say? "Hi, Mom, my marriage fell apart, my husband betrayed me, can I come home?" Her mother would be devastated, her father furious. They would both blame themselves, even though they weren't at fault. No, she couldn't call now. She needed to pull herself together first, understand what to do next, and only then talk to her parents. It was 6 a.m. The dawn had fully claimed the sky, and the streets were filling with people hurrying to work. Hwa-yeon sat in the bus shelter, watching life go by, feeling like a ghost. What if she just stayed here? Sat on this bench while the world kept turning, making no decisions, taking no action, just existing? But then her eyes caught something strange. On the bench inside the shelter, in the corner, there was a bundle. No, not a bundle. A man. Hwa-yeon flinched when she realized that on the opposite bench, almost on the floor, lay a man curled up. How had she not seen him before? Probably the pain and tears had blinded her to everything else. She quickly moved closer and crouched down. The man was dressed in an expensive dark suit, and his white shirt was soaked with something dark, blood. Instantly, Hwa-yeon's nurse instincts took over. Professional reflexes were stronger than personal grief. "Sir, can you hear me?" she asked softly, touching his shoulder. No response. The man was unconscious. Hwa-yeon checked his pulse on his neck, weak, but there. His breathing was shallow but steady. She carefully unbuttoned his jacket and saw a torn wound on his right side, just above the waist. A stab wound. The bleeding wasn't heavy, but the injury needed immediate care. Dropping her bag on the floor, Hwa-yeon pulled out her phone and dialed emergency services. "This is Seoul Emergency Dispatch. How may I help you?" "There's an unconscious man, stab wound to the right upper abdomen, moderate blood loss, weak pulse, shallow breathing. Location, bus stop near the Cheonggyecheon Bridge, east side. I need an ambulance immediately." "Ambulance is on its way. Stay on the line." Hwa-yeon didn't wait. She took off her jacket and pressed it firmly against the man's wound, trying to stop the bleeding. Her hands moved quickly and precisely, even though her heart was still in turmoil. Training, experience, instinct, they all took control. "Hold on," she whispered, even though he couldn't hear her. "Help is coming." She checked his pupils, sluggish reaction to light, but still responsive. Possible concussion, or maybe he was unconscious from pain shock and blood loss. He needed warmth. Hwa-yeon removed her light scarf and laid it across his chest. Only then did she notice his face. He looked about 35, with clean, defined features. His hair was neatly trimmed, his skin pale from blood loss. A Swiss watch gleamed on his wrist. The gold cufflinks on his shirt looked genuine. Definitely not a poor man. What had happened? A robbery? 7 minutes later, though it felt like forever, the ambulance arrived. 2 paramedics quickly assessed the situation. "Are you medical personnel?" the senior paramedic asked as they lifted the man onto a stretcher. "Nurse. Private clinic Shining Health," Hwa-yeon replied. "Stab wound, approximately 30 to 40 minutes old judging by clotting. Pulse unstable, pressure likely low. Will you come with us?" the younger paramedic asked. "We'll need a witness statement, and you can assist." Hwa-yeon nodded, grabbed her bag, and climbed into the ambulance. On the way to Samsung Hospital, one of the largest in Seoul, she kept her hand on the man's pulse, monitoring his condition. The paramedics inserted N4 and administered a hemostatic. "Lucky find," said the senior paramedic, a man in his 50s with graying temples. "Another half hour and it would have been too late." "He's lucky you were there." "Lucky?" Hwa-yeon smiled bitterly to herself. If not for her husband's betrayal, for that nightmarish morning, she wouldn't have been wandering by the river in tears, and she never would have found him. Strange irony of fate. At the hospital's emergency department, the man was immediately taken to surgery. The on-call surgeon, a young doctor named Seo, examined the wound quickly and gave his verdict: the muscle tissues damaged, but no internal organs affected. Lucky, knife missed the liver. Simple operation, 2 hours at most. A police officer approached Hwa-yeon. "My name's Officer Hong. You found the victim?" "Yes, at the bus stop by the river." "Please tell me what happened." Hwa-yeon described how she had found the man, his condition, and what she had done. Officer Hong jotted everything down in his notebook. "Did you see anyone suspicious nearby? Any witnesses?" "No, I was alone at the stop. There was no one around. Understood. We'll check the surveillance cameras in the area. Thank you for your help. Please leave your contact information in case we need further statements. Hwa-yeon gave her phone number and address. Her former address. She didn't have one anymore. She started to explain, but the officer just nodded and left. The operating room was on the 3rd floor. Hwa-yeon sat down on a plastic chair in the waiting corridor. The clock read 7:40 a.m. Usually, she'd be finishing her shift around now, changing clothes, heading home. Home, which no longer existed. Reality came crashing back with full weight. For the past hour and a half, she'd been operating on autopilot, saving a stranger's life. But now, in the quiet hospital corridor, her thoughts returned to Soo-ho, to Min Seo, to her shattered marriage. Tears welled up again, but she forced herself not to cry. She couldn't break down in public. She couldn't show weakness. A nurse passed by carrying a tray of instruments. A doctor peeked into the staff room. The hum of hospital life went on, indifferent and steady, and somehow, that impersonal rhythm soothed her. Here, everyone was busy. No betrayals, no dramas, just work, professionalism, and saving lives. Maybe she should just stay here. Work until exhaustion, so she wouldn't have to think, wouldn't have to feel. 2 hours later, the operating room doors opened, and Dr. Seo emerged, pulling off his surgical mask. The operation went well, he said. The wounds closed, blood loss compensated by transfusion. The patient will wake up soon, but he'll need at least 3 days of rest. Does he have any relatives? Hwa-yeon asked. Someone we should contact? The doctor shook his head. We found a phone and wallet on him, but the phone's broken, probably during the attack. We identified him through his driver's license, Kwon In-soo, 36, CEO of the pharmaceutical company New Life. We contacted his office. They said his family lives in Gyeongsang province and can't arrive until tomorrow. For now, he's alone. Kwon In-soo. The CEO. Hwa-yeon looked at the closed doors of the recovery room. This man, powerful, wealthy, successful, was now lying alone in a hospital bed, with no one by his side. May I stay? She asked suddenly. I'm a nurse. I can watch over him, monitor his condition. Dr. Seo looked at her in surprise. You're not family. But honestly, we're short-staffed. It would help. Just so you know, it's unpaid. I don't need money, Hwa-yeon said quietly. I just want to help. All right. Room 217. Nurse Han is on duty there. She'll brief you. Room 217 was a small, single-patient ward with a window overlooking the hospital's inner courtyard. Kwon In-soo lay in the bed, hooked up to an IV and a heart monitor. His face was pale, but his breathing was steady. A white bandage showed through the opening of his hospital gown. Hwa-yeon sat on the chair beside the bed and simply looked at him. This man was a complete stranger, yet saving his life had given her a purpose, however temporary. A reason not to think about her own shattered life. Nurse Han, a plump woman in her 40s with a kind face, brought her a clean uniform. If you're going to stay on duty, better change. It's more hygienic. And here's the chart, vitals every 2 hours. Hwa-yeon thanked her and changed into the nurse's uniform. The familiar feel of crisp white fabric against her skin calmed her. She was back in her element, doing what she knew best. The first day passed slowly. In-soo didn't regain consciousness, normal after anesthesia and trauma. Hwa-yeon changed his IV, checked his pulse and blood pressure, and logged the data in his chart. Nurse Han brought meals, simple rice with vegetables and soup, but Hwa-yeon could barely eat. The lump in her throat made swallowing impossible. That evening, a message arrived from Soo-ho. You still didn't pick up your things. Throwing them out tomorrow morning. Final warning. Hwa-yeon looked at the screen and simply deleted it. Things? What did things matter when her life had collapsed? Let him throw them away. Let him do whatever he wanted. She didn't care. But that was a lie. She did care. Deep inside, the pain still burned so fiercely it felt like it would never fade. The second day. In the morning, In-soo stirred and groaned. Hwa-yeon immediately went to check on him. He opened his eyes, dark, almost black, clouded by the remnants of anesthesia. Where am I? He rasped. At Samsung Hospital, she said gently. You had surgery. You were attacked, stab-wound. You need to rest. He tried to sit up, but the pain made him gasp and sink back down. Don't move, Hwa-yeon said, adjusting the pillow behind his head. The stitches could tear. He closed his eyes, breathing heavily. After a moment, he spoke again. How? How did I get here? I found you at a bus stop near the Cheonggyecheon River. I called an ambulance. In-soo opened his eyes, looking at her in surprise. You saved me? I just did what I had to, she replied quietly. I'm a nurse. He steadied her for a moment, then nodded and drifted back to sleep. Hwa-yeon returned to her chair. That afternoon, Dr. Seo came on rounds. After examining the wound, he seemed pleased. Healing well. No complications. A few more days and he can be discharged. By the evening of the second day, In-soo was more alert. He ate a light meal slowly but on his own. Hwa-yeon helped him sit up more comfortably. What's your name? He asked after finishing. Lee Hwa-yeon. Kwon In-soo, he said, attempting a smile, though pain turned it into a grimace. But I suppose you already know. I do, she nodded. Why did you stay? His question came unexpectedly. You didn't have to watch over a stranger. Hwa-yeon hesitated. How could she explain? How could she tell him she simply had nowhere else to go? That sitting by his bedside was the only thing keeping her from falling apart? I had time, she said simply. And I wanted to make sure you recovered. In-soo looked at her intently, as if trying to understand something beyond her words. But he didn't press further. The third day. In-soo was feeling much better. He could talk without gasping and even cracked a few jokes. The police came to take his statement. It turned out 3 muggers had attacked him in an alley near his car, stealing his wallet and phone. Security cameras had caught them, and the search was already underway. Foolish of me to cut through a dark alley at 3 in the morning, he admitted after the officers left. I was coming back from a business meeting, wanted to save time. The important thing is that you're alive, Hwa-yeon said, changing his bandage. Her movements were steady and gentle. In-soo watched her work, gratitude in his gaze. Mrs. Lee, he said when she finished, may I ask you a personal question? Hwa-yeon tensed. What kind of question? You're wearing a ring, but you've been here alone for 3 days. Isn't your husband worried? Hwa-yeon looked down at the simple gold band on her finger, the wedding ring Suho had put there 3 years ago. She still hadn't taken it off. My husband. Her voice faltered. She hesitated, then exhaled. Why not tell the truth? What difference did it make? My husband left me, she said, the words coming out more easily than she expected. 3 days ago. The night I found you. I came home early from work and caught him with another woman. He threw me out. Said he didn't need me anymore. Silence filled the room. In-soo looked at her, his expression a mix of shock and compassion. Hwa-yeon felt tears rising again. I'm sorry, he said softly. So am I, she whispered, turning away so he wouldn't see her face. The 4th day. By morning, In-soo was able to walk around the room, slowly, holding onto the wall for support. Dr. Seo approved his discharge for the next day, on the condition that someone would look after him at home. My mother's flying in from Busan tonight, Insu told Hwa-yeon. She'll stay with me until I fully recover. That's good, Hwa-yeon said, stacking his medical charts. You need family support. Insu sat on the edge of the bed, his expression thoughtful. Mrs. Lee. Hwa-yeon. May I call you that? Of course. Hwa-yeon, I've been thinking a lot these past few days. About how you saved me, stayed by my side when you didn't have to. How you cared for a total stranger. And I want to do something in return. Hwa-yeon shook her head. I don't need anything. I was just doing my job. No, Insu said firmly. It was more than a job. You stayed when you could have walked away. You were there when I was helpless. And I know why. Because you had nowhere else to go. Hwa-yeon lifted her head sharply, meeting his gaze. He understood. He could see her pain. I have a proposal, he continued. Please, hear me out before you refuse. He stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the city skyline beyond the glass. My pharmaceutical company is going through a complicated period. Not financially, the business is thriving, but politically. The board of directors thinks I'm unfit to remain president unless I demonstrate personal stability. They want a family man at the helm. But I'm single, and worse, I have a reputation as a perpetual bachelor who changes girlfriends like gloves. Hwa-yeon listened silently, still not sure where this was leading. In 2 months, the board will vote, Insu said, turning toward her. If I appear as a married man, my chances will increase significantly. If not, the position will go to my rival, a dishonest man who'll destroy everything I've built over the past 5 years. Hwa-yeon began to guess where this was leading, and her heart started beating faster. I'm asking you to marry me, Insu said calmly. A fake marriage, valid for 1 year. After that, we'll divorce quietly. During that year, you'll have your own place to live, financial stability, and a chance to start a new life. I'll secure the presidency. A mutually beneficial arrangement. No obligations beyond publicly presenting ourselves as husband and wife. Hwa-yeon stood frozen, unable to utter a word. Marriage? A fake marriage with a stranger? This is insane, she whispered. Perhaps, Insu admitted. But think about it, what do you have to lose? You don't have a home, you can't afford rent, and your job at the clinic can hardly cover your expenses. A divorce will take time and money for a lawyer. What I'm offering is a solution. 1 year in a comfortable home, everything you need, no pressure. Just help me keep my company. Hwa-yeon's legs gave way, and she sat down in a chair. Why me? She asked. You could find anyone. Someone from your own circle, someone more suitable. Because you saved my life, Insu said simply. Because I see honesty, kindness, and strength in you. Because you're at rock bottom too, and maybe we can help each other climb out. I don't want to hire an actress to play a role. I want a real person beside me. Hwa-yeon covered her face with her hands. It all felt too unreal. Just 4 days ago, she'd been a married woman with a stable life, not perfect, but hers. Now she was homeless, abandoned. Not yet divorced. Suho was only planning to file the papers. I need time to think, she said, lowering her hands. Of course, Insu nodded. You have 3 days. I understand it's a shocking proposal. But I promise, no pressure, no hidden conditions. Just a business arrangement that could help us both. Nurse Han entered with a tray of medicine, and the conversation broke off. Hwa-yeon helped Insu take his pills and stepped out of the room. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. A marriage of convenience. A year with a stranger. It was madness. But what did she have? 2 weeks until her next paycheck, 50,000 won in her pocket, a bag of clothes, and no home. That evening, Hwa-yeon sat in the hospital cafeteria staring into her cup of tea. Her phone vibrated, a message from an unknown number. "This is Yoon-yeon, Suho's co-worker. I saw he threw your things in the trash outside your building. I'm so sorry. If you need help, text me." He'd thrown them away. Everything left from 3 years of marriage, into the garbage. Hwa-yeon set the phone on the table and looked out the window. The sky outside was darkening, city lights flickering to life. Somewhere out there, Suho was enjoying his new life with Min Seo, not thinking about the wife he'd left behind. Somewhere out there, people were making plans, dreaming, loving. And she was sitting in a hospital cafeteria, deciding whether to agree to a marriage with a stranger. Why not? She suddenly thought. What do I have to lose? I already have nothing. The next day, when In-soo was being discharged, Hwa-yeon came to his room with a firm decision. He was standing by the window, dressed in a clean suit brought by his mother, an elegant woman in her 60s with silver hair and a kind face. "Mother," In-soo said, turning toward her, "this is Lee Hwa-yeon, the nurse who saved my life." "Mrs. Kwon took Hwa-yeon's hands in hers. "Thank you. Thank you for giving me back my son. I owe you forever." "I only did what was right," Hwa-yeon said softly. When his mother stepped into the corridor to speak with Dr. Seo, Hwa-yeon and In-soo were left alone. "I agree," she said without hesitation. "To your proposal. 1 year of a fake marriage." In-soo didn't look surprised. He only nodded. "Are you sure?" "No," she admitted honestly. "But I don't have better options. And if this helps us both, why not try?" "All right." In-soo took a business card and pen from his pocket and wrote down an address. "Tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come here. My lawyer will draft the marriage contract. We'll go over every detail, you'll get a copy to review. If everything looks fine, we'll sign it in 3 days. Will you have time to finalize your divorce by then?" "He hasn't filed yet," Hwa-yeon said, clutching the card. "But I will. It takes about 2 months if there's no property dispute. We didn't share anything, so it should go smoothly." "Good. Then once the divorce is finalized, we'll submit the marriage registration. The ceremony will be a month later, plenty of time before the board vote." It all sounded so businesslike, so cold. But maybe that was for the best. No emotions, no illusions, just clear calculation. Hwa-yeon went to the HR department of the Shining Health Clinic and filed for a 1-month unpaid leave. The head nurse, Mrs. Yoon, was surprised but didn't pry. "If you need help, don't hesitate to ask. You're a good worker, we'd hate to lose you." Then Hwa-yeon went to the district court and filed for divorce. The process was surprisingly simple: fill out a form, attach copies of documents, pay a fee. Suho didn't even need to be notified personally, the court would handle that. Walking out of the courthouse, Hwa-yeon felt an odd sense of relief. She had taken the first step toward a new life. Even if that life began with a fake marriage, it was her choice, her decision. The next day, at exactly 2 in the afternoon, Hwa-yeon stood before a tall glass building in the business district of Gangnam. The law firm Song & Partners occupied the 12th floor. In-soo met her in the conference room, looking much better. His color was almost normal, and he moved without visible pain. Their lawyer, Mr. Ryu, a man in his 40s in a crisp suit, spread several documents before her. "The marriage contract is valid for 1 year, with an option to extend by mutual consent," he began. "The main terms: Mrs. Lee will have a separate bedroom in Mr. Kwon's residence, a monthly allowance of 3 million won, health insurance, and a personal car. Upon expiration of the contract, she will receive ownership of an apartment, 45 square meters, location of her choice, and a lump sum payment of 50 million won. Hwa-yeon listened in disbelief. 3 million won a month, that was more than 2 months' salary at the clinic. An apartment of her own. 50 million won in cash. That's too much, she whispered. It's fair, Insu countered calmly. You're helping me secure a position that will bring the company billions in annual profit. This is reasonable compensation for your time and cooperation. Mr. Ryu continued, Mrs. Lee's obligations: attend official company events as Mr. Kwon's spouse, maintain the public appearance of a happy marriage, and not disclose the contract's terms to third parties. Mr. Kwon's obligations: provide comfortable living conditions, refrain from interfering in his spouse's private life outside public events, and uphold confidentiality. After the contract ends, the divorce will be filed by mutual agreement, with no claims from either party. There's one more clause, Insu added, meeting her eyes. If during this year we decide we want to turn the fake marriage into a real one, the contract will be voided, and the marriage will continue under normal circumstances. But only if both agree, no pressure. Hwa-yeon nodded, her fingers trembling as she turned the pages. Everything was written clearly, legally sound, with no hidden traps. Please review it carefully, said Attorney Ryu. You may show the contract to an independent lawyer if you wish. The signing will take place in 3 days, as agreed. Hwa-yeon took her copy of the contract and stood up. Thank you. I'll review it. Hwa-yeon, Insu called out as she was heading for the door. I know this all seems strange and unusual, but I promise I'll treat you with respect. A year will pass quickly, and afterward, you'll be able to start over, with a solid foundation. She looked at him, this man she had known for only 5 days, yet who was offering her something her own husband hadn't given her in 3 years: respect, security, and a chance. I believe you, she said softly and walked out. The next 2 days, Hwa-yeon spent in a cheap hotel, reading the contract over and over. She showed it to a lawyer she knew, her brother's classmate who lived in Seoul. He read it carefully and gave his verdict: the contract is flawless. All your rights are protected. If Kwon violates any terms, you'll receive double compensation. It's an honest deal, Hwa-yeon. I see no hidden traps. On the 3rd day, early in the morning, Hwa-yeon stood before the mirror in her hotel room. She removed Suho's wedding ring and placed it on the nightstand. It was time to let go of the past. At 2 in the afternoon, she returned to Attorney Ryu's office. Insu was already there, accompanied by 2 witnesses, his assistant, an elegant woman named Seo Ji-hyun, and the company's chief accountant, Mr. Oh. Are you ready? Insu asked. Yes, Hwa-yeon replied firmly. They signed the contract. Black ink touched white paper, and Hwa-yeon's life changed forever. Kwon Insu's home was located in the prestigious Songbuk district, on a hill overlooking the city. A 2-story modern house with large panoramic windows, a well-kept garden, and an underground garage. Hwa-yeon saw it for the first time 2 days after signing the contract, when Insu invited her to take a look. This is too much, she whispered, standing in the spacious living room with marble floors and designer furniture. It's just a house, Insu said simply. Your bedroom is on the 2nd floor, 3rd door on the left. It has a walk-in closet and a private bathroom. Mine is in the opposite wing, so we won't disturb each other. He showed her around. The kitchen was equipped with the latest appliances. The dining room had a massive wooden table. There was a study with a library, a gym in the basement. Everything radiated wealth, but not ostentatious luxury, rather, comfort and good taste. Hwa-yeon's room was bright and cozy, with a queen-sized bed, a soft chair by the window, and a vanity table. In the walk-in closet hung several new dresses, suits, and casual clothes. Ji-hyun picked out a basic wardrobe in your size, Insu explained, standing in the doorway. If anything doesn't fit, she'll help you shop. You'll also need a stylist before the first official event, the company's anniversary reception in 2 weeks. Hwa-yeon sat on the edge of the bed, still unable to believe this was real. Insu, she began, I don't know how to be the wife of a wealthy man. I don't know how to behave at receptions, what to say, how to. You'll learn, he interrupted gently. Ji-hyun will guide you. She's been my assistant for 5 years, she knows every detail. And don't worry so much. Just be yourself. That's what I value most in you, your sincerity. He left, and Hwa-yeon was alone with her new reality. She walked to the window and looked out at the city below. From here, Seoul looked like a toy, tiny, distant. Somewhere down there, in one of those countless apartments, Suho was living his life. She wondered if he ever thought of her. Did he regret it? Probably not. During the first week, Hwa-yeon was getting used to her new home. In-soo was rarely there, his work consumed all his time. He left at 8 in the morning and returned after 11 at night. They only met at breakfast, prepared by the housekeeper, Mrs. Moon. Good morning, In-soo would say, walking into the kitchen in his immaculate business suit, his tie perfectly knotted. Good morning, Hwa-yeon would reply, pouring him coffee. They ate in silence or exchanged polite remarks about the weather and daily plans. A strange, awkward coexistence of two strangers under one roof. Ji-hyun came 3 times a week, teaching Hwa-yeon the etiquette of high society. At receptions, you don't discuss politics or religion, she explained, sitting in the living room with a notebook. Safe topics are art, travel, philanthropy. Smile, but not too broadly. Listen more than you speak. And most importantly, stay close to Mr. Kwon, but not intrusively. A light touch on his arm, a look that shows affection. Hwa-yeon took notes, feeling like an actress preparing for a role. The day before the reception, a stylist arrived, a young man named Cha Min-ho with brightly dyed hair and multiple earrings. My God, such potential! He exclaimed, studying her face. Classic features, beautiful skin. Let's make you stunning. For 3 hours, he worked his magic, styling her hair, applying makeup, choosing jewelry. When Hwa-yeon looked in the mirror, she didn't recognize herself. An elegant woman in an emerald evening gown, with an intricate updo and soft makeup accentuating her eyes and cheekbones, gazed back at her. You're breathtaking, Min-ho said proudly. That evening, In-soo came home earlier than usual. Hwa-yeon came downstairs to the living room, still in the dress and makeup, to show him the result. In-soo froze at the doorway. His gaze swept over her, and something flickered in his eyes, something that made her heart beat faster. Admiration? Surprise? You look stunning, he said quietly. Everyone will be amazed tomorrow. Thank you, Hwa-yeon replied, feeling her cheeks flush. The stylist deserves the credit. No, In-soo said, stepping closer. It's yours. You've always been beautiful, Hwa-yeon. It's just highlighted now. A strange silence settled between them. Hwa-yeon lowered her eyes, not knowing what to say. It was just part of the contract, she reminded herself. He was supposed to say kind things, it was part of playing the caring husband. Then why did something flutter inside her chest? The anniversary reception of the New Life Pharmaceutical Company took place at the 5-star Shilla Hotel. A grand banquet hall, hundreds of guests in evening attire, waiters carrying trays of champagne, an orchestra playing classical music. Hwa-yeon held In-soo's arm, smiling as he introduced her to board members, their wives, and business partners. Ji-hyun's words echoed in her mind, smile. Stay close. A gentle touch. Please meet my wife, Lee Hwa-yeon, In-soo would say, his voice carrying a note of pride that almost sounded real. How lovely! Exclaimed Mrs. Choi, the wife of one of the directors. How did you two meet? Under special circumstances, In-soo replied, looking at Hwa-yeon with warmth. She saved my life. He recounted the story of the attack, omitting the part that they had been strangers. People listened, gasped, called their meeting fate. Hwa-yeon played her role flawlessly, smiling, nodding, answering questions. No one could have guessed that this marriage was nothing but a business deal. During the dinner, as they sat at the head table, Insu leaned toward her and whispered, "You're doing wonderfully." "Thank you." "It's part of the contract," Hwa-yeon replied just as quietly, though the polite smile on her face didn't waver. After dinner, the dancing began. Insu invited her for a slow dance. She placed her hand on his shoulder, he wrapped his arm around her waist, and they began to waltz. Hwa-yeon wasn't a good dancer, she had never learned, but Insu led her with quiet confidence, smoothing over her awkwardness. "Relax," he whispered. "Just follow my lead." Their faces were close, and for the first time, Hwa-yeon noticed his scent, a faint woody cologne with a hint of citrus. She noticed the golden flecks in his dark eyes. She noticed how steady and gentle his touch was. When the music ended, they returned to the table. The evening dragged on, and Hwa-yeon was growing tired of endless smiles and small talk when she suddenly heard a voice that made her blood run cold. "Insu! Long time no see." She turned and saw Suho. Her ex-husband stood just a few meters away, wearing a cheap suit completely out of place in such an event. Beside him stood Min Seo, in a bright red dress with a plunging neckline and heavy makeup. Hwa-yeon felt the ground slip beneath her feet. "What is he doing here?" "Suho Choi," he said, extending his hand to Insu with a self-assured smile. "I'm the manager of the Olympic Fitness Center. We're partners with your company in the corporate wellness program." Insu shook his hand, his expression politely neutral. "Nice to meet you." Suho's gaze slid toward Hwa-yeon, and she saw the change in his face. Shock. Disbelief. Then anger. "Hwa-yeon?" His voice was sharp. "What are you doing here?" Insu slipped an arm around her waist, drawing her closer. "You know my wife?" Silence. Min Seo's mouth fell open. Suho went pale. "Your wife?" he repeated. "Is this some kind of joke?" "No joke," Insu said calmly. "Hwa-yeon is my wife. We were married a month ago." Suho stared at her, a mix of rage and confusion in his eyes. You got married? To him? But we're not even officially divorced yet." "The divorce is in process," Hwa-yeon said coldly, summoning her strength. "The court issued a decision last week. The documents will be finalized in a month." The marriage ceremony with Insu was approved in advance. It was a lie, they hadn't legally registered the marriage, but Suho didn't need to know that. "Impossible," he hissed. "A month ago, you were a broke, crying mess on the street. And now you're a millionaire's wife? What did you do, huh? Seduce him?" Insu took a step forward, his voice suddenly steel. "Watch your words, Mr. Choi. You're insulting my wife." "She's not your wife," Suho shouted, drawing the attention of nearby guests. "She's mine. We were married for 3 years. Were," Hwa-yeon emphasized. "Were, until you threw me out for your mistress. My life is no longer your concern." Min Seo tugged at his sleeve. "Let's go, you're making a scene." But Suho wouldn't move. He stared at Hwa-yeon, and in his eyes flickered something like regret. "Hwa-yeon, wait. Let's talk." "Maybe we rushed the divorce." "No," she said firmly. "We didn't. You made your choice. Live with it." The hotel security, noticing the growing tension, approached him. "Sir, please calm down or leave the event." Suho gave Hwa-yeon one last look, then turned and strode out of the hall, Min Seo tottering after him on her heels. Hwa-yeon trembled. Insu held her tightly around the waist. "Are you all right?" "Yes," she whispered, though it was a lie. "I just didn't expect to see him. Come on. Let's get some air." He led her out onto the balcony, where it was quiet and cool. The October night wrapped them in a soft chill. Hwa-yeon leaned against the railing, trying to calm her racing heart. He's your ex-husband, Insu said. It wasn't a question, a statement. Yes, she nodded. The one who left me. Insu stood beside her, gazing at the city lights. He's a fool. Letting go of a woman like you, that's an unforgivable mistake. She looked at him. You're just saying that because it's part of the act. No, Insu turned to her, sincerity in his eyes. I'm saying it because it's true. Over this past month, I've come to know you. You're strong, kind, honest. You saved my life without asking for anything in return. You agreed to this insane contract because you were brave enough to take a risk for your future. He didn't deserve you, Hwa-yeon. He never did. His words warmed something deep inside her. Hwa-yeon felt tears rise, but she held them back. Thank you, she whispered. They returned to the hall, and the rest of the evening passed without incident. On the drive home in Insu's car, Hwa-yeon gazed out the window at the city lights, thinking how strange life could be. A month ago, she'd been at rock bottom. Now she was sitting in a luxury car beside a man who treated her with more respect than her husband ever had in 3 years of marriage. Maybe a fake marriage wasn't such a terrible thing after all. 8 months passed. Spring had come to Seoul, and the city was covered in blooming cherry blossoms, pink petals drifting through the air, settling on sidewalks and lawns. Hwa-yeon stood on the balcony of Insu's house, their house now, sipping her morning coffee and admiring the view. Much had changed in those months. Insu had become president of the company. The board's vote was unanimous. Having a calm, elegant wife by his side had played a decisive role. Hwa-yeon had returned to work at the clinic, this time as a senior nurse. Insu had helped with recommendations and funding for her additional training courses. But the most important change had happened between them. Somewhere between business receptions and quiet breakfasts, between polite conversations and evening walks in the garden, between a contract and real life, they had fallen in love. Hwa-yeon couldn't remember the exact moment it happened. Maybe it was the night Insu brought her hot tea at 3 in the morning when she couldn't sleep after a nightmare about Suho. Maybe it was when he patiently taught her to play chess, laughing at her clumsy moves. Or when she sat in his office helping with paperwork, and he smiled gratefully, saying, "I don't know how I ever managed without you." Their feelings grew slowly, like spring flowers pushing through the soil. First respect, then friendship, then tenderness, and finally, love. 2 weeks ago, during an evening walk in the park, Insu stopped beneath a blooming cherry tree and took her hands in his. "Hwa-yeon, I need to tell you something. Our contract expires in 4 months. But I don't want you to leave. I don't want this to end. I've fallen in love with you. Truly, without pretense, without roles. You've become a part of my life, and I can't imagine the future without you." Hwa-yeon's heart pounded so hard it seemed the whole world could hear it. She looked into his eyes and saw sincerity, warmth, love. "I've fallen in love with you too," she whispered. "A long time ago. I was just afraid to admit it, afraid it was one-sided, afraid I'd break the contract." Insu pulled her close and kissed her, gently, tenderly, as if she were the most precious thing in the world. Cherry blossom petals swirled around them, and the moment felt almost magical. "When this contract ends," he whispered when their lips parted, "let's make it real. A real wedding. A real marriage. Not a contract, but love." "Yes," Hwa-yeon said through tears of happiness, smiling. "Yes, I want to be with you." And now, standing on the balcony on a late April morning, Hwa-yeon thought about how far she had come from that desperate woman wandering the streets in tears 8 months ago. Life had given her a second chance, and she had seized it with both hands. "Good morning, my love," Insu said, stepping out onto the balcony. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Good morning," Hwa-yeon turned and kissed him on the cheek. "Did you sleep well?" "Perfectly. I always do when you're beside me." They went back to the kitchen, where Mrs. Moon had already set the table, eggs, toast, fresh fruit, orange juice. A simple, cozy breakfast shared by two people who were no longer playing roles but simply living their lives. This evening we're having dinner with my mother, Ensu reminded her as he spread jam on his toast. She wants to discuss the wedding ceremony details. Hwa-yeon nodded. Ensu's mother, Mrs. Kwon, had welcomed her with open arms. She'd seen how much her son had changed over the months, how peaceful, how happy he'd become, and she thanked Hwa-yeon every time they met. "I called my parents yesterday," Hwa-yeon said. "I invited them to the wedding." My mother cried from happiness. "They're wonderful people," Ensu smiled. "I'm glad they'll be there." Hwa-yeon's parents, humble workers from the countryside, had been shocked at first by the news that their daughter had married a wealthy businessman. But when Ensu visited 2 months earlier, greeting them modestly and respectfully, helping her father unload crates at the fish factory, and assisting her mother with dinner, they understood that this man truly loved their daughter. "You're just like us, only in a suit," her father had said, clapping him on the shoulder. "Take care of our Hwa-yeon." "I'll take care of her for the rest of my life," Ensu had promised. Then Hwa-yeon's phone buzzed. A message from her colleague, Nurse Seo-yoon-ji. "Turn on the news. They're showing your ex." Frowning, Hwa-yeon turned on the TV in the living room. The news anchor was reporting, "Scandal at the Olympus Sports Center. Manager Choi Soo-ho is accused of embezzlement and fraud. Police are investigating." The screen showed a blurred image of Soo-ho being led out of the building in handcuffs. Hwa-yeon froze. Soo-ho. Arrested. Embezzlement. Fraud. What happened? Ensu came up behind her, saw the screen. "Is that my ex-husband?" she finished quietly. They watched the report to the end. It turned out that Soo-ho had been siphoning money from clients, forging documents, deceiving partners. The scheme had gone on for about a year before it was finally exposed. He was facing up to 5 years in prison. "I pity him," Hwa-yeon whispered, turning off the TV. "As a person who chose the wrong path and destroyed his own life." "You have a kind heart," Ensu said, embracing her. "But he made his choice. Greed, deceit, betrayal, these things always bear their own fruit." That evening, during dinner with Ensu's mother at a quiet restaurant, as they discussed the wedding, venue, guest list, menu, Hwa-yeon's phone rang again. An unknown number. "Hello? Hwa-yeon." The voice was broken, pleading. "It's Soo-ho." She froze. Her hand trembled as she held the phone. Ensu gave her a questioning look, and she silently mouthed, "Soo-ho." "What do you want?" she asked coldly. "Please. Meet me. I need your help." His voice shook with panic. "I know I don't deserve it, but you're the only one who—" "I don't owe you anything," she interrupted. "Please." He almost screamed. "I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. Min-seo left me when she found out about the debts. Everyone's turned their back on me." "I'm not the only one," she said firmly. "I'm just the one you remembered when you had no one else. But you know what? I'm not your backup plan. Not your safety net. You chose your path 8 months ago, when you threw me out, when you called me boring and useless. Now live with that choice." But I regret it." He sobbed. "I realized you were the best thing that ever happened to me. Please, forgive me. Give me a second chance." Hwa-yeon looked at Ensu, who was sitting across from her, holding her free hand in silent support. She looked at his mother, who nodded gently. She looked down at the wedding ring on her finger, new, beautiful, a symbol of real love. "Soo-ho," she said calmly, "I hope you find the strength to face the consequences of your actions. I hope you change, become a better man. But I won't be part of that process. My life is no longer tied to yours. Goodbye." She ended the call and blocked his number. Her hands were trembling, but inside she felt peace. She had closed the last chapter of her past. I'm proud of you, Insu said softly, kissing her hand. I am too, his mother smiled. You're a strong woman, Hwa-yeon. My son is lucky to have you. 3 weeks later, in mid-May, when Seoul's parks were bursting with color and the sky was a perfect blue, Kwon In-soo and Lee Hwa-yeon were married in a real wedding ceremony. A small but elegant celebration in a botanical garden, beneath an arch of white roses and hydrangeas. Hwa-yeon walked down the aisle in an ivory wedding dress, simple, graceful, escorted by her parents, her father proud, her mother tearful with joy. Ahead waited In-soo, in a classic black suit, his eyes shining with love so deep that it took her breath away. Do you take this woman to be your lawful wife? The officiant asked. Yes, In-soo said firmly. I promise to love, honor, and cherish her for the rest of my life. And do you take this man to be your lawful husband? Yes, Hwa-yeon replied, her voice full of emotion. I promise to love, respect, and stand by him always. They exchanged rings, not the false symbols of a contract, but true tokens of eternal love. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. In-soo kissed Hwa-yeon tenderly as the guests applauded. Mrs. Kwon dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. Hwa-yeon's parents embraced, and colleagues from the clinic and the company smiled warmly. At the reception, as they danced their first dance as husband and wife, In-soo whispered in her ear, Do you know what I'm thinking about? What? That the worst morning of your life led us to each other. That pain and betrayal turned into happiness. And that I'm grateful for every single day with you. Hwa-yeon pressed closer to him, tears of joy blurring her vision. So am I, she whispered. Grateful for everything, for the pain that made me stronger, for meeting you, and for this chance at happiness. The music played, guests laughed, and life went on, new, bright, and full of hope. A year later, in autumn, when the leaves once again turned crimson and gold, Hwa-yeon stood in the same hospital room at Samsung Medical Center where she had once watched over a wounded stranger. But this time, she was there for a different reason. Congratulations, Dr. Seo said with a warm smile, handing her the test results. You're pregnant. Twins, a boy and a girl. Hwa-yeon looked at the sheet with the results and couldn't hold back her tears of joy. Twins. She and In-soo were going to be parents of twins. That evening, she told her husband the news. In-soo froze for a moment, then lifted her into his arms and spun her around the living room, laughing. We're going to be parents. A real family. Hwa-yeon, you've made me the happiest man in the world. They stood embraced, and Hwa-yeon thought how strange and beautiful life could be. A year ago, she had been a broken woman with no future. Now she had everything, a loving husband, a secure home, a meaningful job, and soon, children. Somewhere in the city, Suho was serving his sentence, paying for his mistakes. Min Seo had left Seoul, trying to start over. Their paths had parted forever. Hwa-yeon felt no anger. She simply lived, savoring each day, each moment of happiness. 9 months later, on an early summer morning, the Kwon twins were born at Samsung Hospital, a boy, Min-jun, and a girl, So-yeon. Tiny, perfect, with loud voices and strong little fists. In-soo sat beside Hwa-yeon, holding his son while she nursed their daughter, his eyes shining. Thank you, he whispered. For this family. For this happiness. For being you. Thank you, Hwa-yeon replied, looking at him with endless love. For saving me that night by the river. Not physically, you were unconscious, but later. You gave me a home when I had none. Love, when I was broken. A future, when I saw no reason to live. We saved each other, In-soo said quietly. And it was true. 10 years passed. The twins, Min-jun and So-yeon, had grown into bright, cheerful children. Hwa-yeon headed a department in the new corporate clinic New Life, which In-soo's company had built. The company itself was thriving under his leadership. One day, while walking with the children through a park near the Cheonggyecheon River, Hwa-yeon stopped by the same bus stop where she had once found a wounded In-soo. The bench was still there, the glass shelter a little worn, but the place remained unchanged. "Mom, what are you looking at?" So-yeon asked, holding her hand. "At the place where our happiness began," Hwa-yeon smiled. "Here?" Min-jun asked, surprised. "What's so special about a bus stop?" "This is where Mom saved Dad," said In-soo, coming up and wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "And later, Dad saved Mom. That's how we became a family." The children exchanged glances, not fully understanding, but smiled anyway. They were still too young for the full story, but someday, Hwa-yeon would tell them everything about the pain of betrayal, the power of forgiveness, and how even in the darkest moments, life can bring an incredible gift. A new chance, a new love, a new happiness. For now, they simply stood together, the four of them, a strong, happy family under the October sky, as beautiful as the morning when it had all begun. Somewhere far away, Suho had been released from prison, trying to piece together the fragments of his shattered life. He had seen photos of Hwa-yeon on social media, happy, radiant, with her husband and children, and understood the magnitude of what he had lost. But that was his story, his lesson. And the story of Hwa-yeon and In-soo was entirely different, a story of how the darkest day can become the beginning of the most beautiful journey. A story of how true love doesn't always come the first time, but when it does, it stays forever.